let's check this out. So I'm going to get a quick sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bridge tower, bridge tower. Sound down here. All right, guys, let's kick off with the sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you hear me? Barinka Tower, Barinka Tower. And we're all running on about, if I count it right, about an 11-second delay. So from the time I say something, from you hit your keyboard to me getting it's about 11 seconds. Man, I've had my coffee. I'm drinking water, but it still seem to feel the need to clear my throat. And turn it down just a little. There we go. Now, lifelike color. Loud and clear. Okay, guys. I made notes today, and I got a whole bunch of cool stuff to go over. I actually did some research for this episode before we get started. Thanks for coming. Glad you're here. Ken may join us in about an hour. He's out shopping with the wife. I just called him. He has abandoned his post, and we'll deal with that later. So, let's see where to go to start off with. Okay. First off, this was sent to me by Glue Tripper. That's a Plastic Imagination workshop. Yeah, workshop. I write things down, but I can't read my own writing. Anyway, and he gave me a shout out on his recent video. And this balsa kit, we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of balsa kits that somebody got, but also it actually has to do, we're going to talk a little bit more about dating kits. There's a couple of things that were sent to me by somebody, mostly about die cast, but it also applies to kit models. And I know a lot of people are often wondering when they get a kit, you know, when it was made. And of course, we run off the scale mates and see if the box art matches the one we have. We look for little changes. And first off, I thought we'd talk about that just a little bit, about dating yourself or dating the kit you've got. because apparently some folks have gotten hoodwinked a little bit, and it's hard to believe, but I guess in every endeavor out there, there's always some skullduggery, somebody that wants to take advantage. It's obviously common with collecting stamps, coins, cars, but even in kit models. We talked about this a little bit before. Yeah, he's AWOL, but don't worry, he'll make repairs when he gets back. Yes, by the way, thank you for the Canadian mint. My wife on with that, like, what are you giving my cat? You know, and oh man, you guys, if you didn't see the video, she went absolutely bonkers for that stuff. And she actually tried to bite my wife a couple times, really, you know, not really bite her, but it was like, woohoo, honey gone bad. So she was definitely breaking bad with that stuff. She loved it. And my wife hit it and she found it. So, so we're just calling it cat crack. Anywho, hey guys, how you doing? Okay, so one of the things that somebody ran into a little trouble with, this is my understanding it's pronounced Guilos. That's why I was told to say it by a couple of sources, and when I contacted them, like, yes, they go by Guilos. But anyway, my whole life I've been calling it Gillos. But this one says right here, copyright 1978. And I assumed that meant that they had changed the kit and copyrighted it in 1978. That is not necessarily what it means. And without really running down the rabbit hole, a lot of the die-cast cars and stuff have like copyright dates of 1940, but Corgi didn't even start business until 56. So there's a lot of question. Anything in a model you buy can be copyrighted. The instruction sheet, the artwork on the box, the changes to the kit. So the information on the side. So when you see something that has a copyright on it, that doesn't even mean it was manufactured after that date. It's kind of bizarre because you're not really 100% sure what's being copyrighted. And because it's just says copyright 1978 made in USA, but it doesn't tell you what's being copyrighted. Is it the box art? Is it the images on back? Is it the information? Is it the model inside? And we're going to talk about this a little bit. The Guilos changed their logo several times, which is a way to date them. And of course, you guys know this goes for, I'm just using Guilos as an example, but this goes for all kinds of stuff. Obviously, Monogram, Revell, Aurora, they all change their logos a lot, which gives you an idea, but sometimes they do retro stuff. And let me see where the... Now, what we have here is 3 kits that were sent to me by a glue trooper, or excuse me, his picture. He acquired these, and okay, let me move this over here a little bit. There we go. Now you can see me again. And tell you what, let me put this on top of Gluey and the logo. Okay, now each of these is a Guilos, and you'll notice each one of them has a different logo, which helps you date when the model was built. I don't have offhand which one's the oldest or the newest, but once you learn your way around any given model manufacturer, provided it's not a current repop, because some of these things that are in the plastic can get quite old and still be in virgin condition. But if they reproduce one that's identical to the old one, old artwork, which is, you know, a thing people like to do, you may wind up buying what you think is a vintage kit, and it's not. And to be honest with you, with wood, I'd much rather get a new one because they're laser cut. Obviously, if you pop out a new Guilos kit and it's laser cut, it was not made in 1978. So, and box art changes. The trick with box art changes is that box art changes are, sometimes they do the whole retro thing, and when they, oops, wrong button. Hit the button, Max. Here we go. Okay, when they do the box art changes, sometimes they'll do the retro thing, and they'll start reusing the old box art again. Now, most of this Guilos box art has not changed. I remember them looking almost identical to this when I was buying them. By the way, my dad had a Musketeer Sport, which is just like the Musketeer you see in the picture. Only had a smaller engine, had a 150 horse engine, and it only had 2 windows. It had a third window. And I always love that Guilo Super Cub. I love the artwork. I love the paint scheme. I love the Super Cub. Never built one. I have plans for this Spitfire that Plastic Imagination Workshop sent me, and not going to try to make it fly. Although I've done that, you guys have probably seen my wall of sham. I got 3 tails up on the wall: the Stearman, the Stuka, and the Zero. And I ripped the wing off the Zero in flight because we overpowered it. But point I'm getting at is, when you're trying to figure out if the kit's a vintage kit, you have to look at little things like that. And looking at the copyright date's not going to tell you anything. That Mustang that I did when I did the Mustang comparison build, that monogram Mustang, well, it's Revell, but when I look on the bottom of the tail, it says monogram 1998, which is, I believe that was when they cut the new molds. So they were that's what they were copyrighting, was the actual pattern. So that was just a heads up. I hate to say it, you got to be out, especially obviously with the interweb. A lot of old newer stuff on old boxes, and it's just tricky. Sadly, Mike Machad had done that video where he talked about how, if the old tape marks matched on the bottom top of the box and stuff, then hey, you probably got an old kit. But people will get an old box and they'll drop new stuff in there, or maybe just a couple of missing parts. If the decals look too new, wait a minute, there's no way these decals were made in '78 and still in this pristine condition, unless it was still in the poly bag. And even so, decals, they rust. That's what the brown and yellowing is. It's basically rust. So, anywho, hey Paul, glad you make it. Yeah, there you go. And by the way, we're going to be talking about Convair here in a little bit, and the Royal New Zealand Air Force. So we got a little. Well, you guys saw the intro, so you saw a picture of the story behind that. Anyway, I just wanted to cover that because some folks thought it'd make a good subject to talk about, and I agree, because dating a kit can really be a tricky thing to do. And I appreciate that one of the Glue Troopers sent me this information, and a couple of Glue Troopers sent me this information, and it was that article on the die-cast toys was particularly informative, because I didn't realize that you can get a model that or a toy or whatever that is actually copyrighted before the company was even in business. So what did they copyright? What does a copyright cover? And they're stamping it on these things. And sometimes there's no copyright information at all. It's it'd be nice if they put a date when the model is manufactured on there, but they're not going to do that. And some companies they will, but they'll hide them in some weird places, and every kit's different. So just buyer beware when you're out there trying to a little search on the internet, resources like Scalemates and Box Art Den and old model kits, and Hink of Holland, really great places to go check out. So I thought we would cover that. Now, by the way, speaking of old kits, a little bit of kind of sad news has been going on for a while. Mike told me that modeling just lost somebody kind of important here. Sean Day passed away. Now, Sean Day was a marketing guy for Revell in their later years. This is a stand for the Huey that he was trying to articulating stand. And these are actual company drawings. And he also is the moving force behind taking the old kits and re-releasing them as the historical series. So, for a lot of us, the only way we were going to, the history makers right here by Revell, the only way we were going to get one of these kits was through the history maker series, because they were obviously repopping old kits. But I was glad to see that they had I guess a way to put it is they pumped new life into them. And he was, I believe, 76 years old, passed away of natural causes. And that was actually a display that was considered to go with the model. And I think that would have helped sell them. I did build one of the history. In fact, one of my kits is a History Makers series. I think it's the Mace. And the same kit. And I really like that kit. Anyway, so there's a little behind the scenes material you don't usually get. Of course, it's just sad that we I'm getting a little low. I'm sorry. Let me move back up here. Okay. So anyway, it's sad that we lost another mover and shaker in the kit model business, and I thought that was something worth noting because to him we owe the entire, really the History Maker series coming to be. And he was a marketing guy, and you know, marketing guys run most companies. I mean, they kind of determine what gets made and everything. So I wanted to give a nod to that. And get into the H room. Going to less weddings and more funerals. Not loving that. So, on to other things. Now, I'm sure most of you guys have seen Mike's video on the amphibious jets that the Navy played with. Well, here we go. Start off here. Let me move that up top side. This is a screen grab from his video, a couple of screen grabs from his video. And okay, Max, highlight, then move it up. There we go. All right. This is the Convair Model 23A. It was a proposal, never got past the wooden mock-up stage. If you have not seen Mike Machat's video on the Convair, the Navy jet amphibians, I highly recommend you go see it. It's informative. He's got a bunch of really fantastic models, and a lot of them are company models. This thing was made in the Convair shop. This wasn't made by Topping or Precise. This was made by Convair, and it was a proposal for a nuclear powered bomber. Well, anyway, I got curious about it. I'm like, how did I not know about this airplane? And I could not find anything online about it except one little blurb in Wikipedia. I couldn't find a single picture. Finally, I actually stumbled on to somebody actually sent me pictures, but at the same time I had stumbled onto just a handful of pictures. And let me roll this up here. And these were in a book and what I found really interesting about this is that this was the only printed source, and there's some other, vehicles that it got me wondering about models that are hard to research. Okay. Now, and this is going to dovetail into the next thing we're going to talk about, which is underrepresented genres and models. But the reason I thought that this was so important is I imagine every one of us out there at some point has tried to get information on a model we were building. You just couldn't find it. There was just nowhere to be found. And this is a classic example. I mean, I didn't even know this airplane existed. There's these obscure books that, only the hardcore have. It's sad. I mean, they should teach this stuff in schools. But, and it got me wondering, when you're trying to research a model and you can't find, and sometimes it'll drive you nuts. You're like, okay, where do I get information on this? And it can really be hard to dig up at times. And the internet has made it a lot easier for a lot of us. It used to be if you didn't have the Squadron book or a really good library, you were just, probably one of the reasons so many people's models are so basic. They just lack the resources for the detailed information. And I've got a literal bookshelf full of books, half of which you guys have sent me, which have given me enough detail. I figure, I've got enough here. I can figure anything up between that and the internet. And then Mike shows that airplane. I'm like, okay, back to square one. And I have to give him props. When you can find an airplane that I've never even seen before, I'm impressed and maybe just slightly humiliated. But so the question is to everybody is, okay, you've got a model you want to build. It's something a little off the wall. Where do you find the information? Imagine all of us start off with Google, all of our usual websites and stuff. And Google, for whatever you think of Google, they are a great engine, even though I had to put some eye drops in my eye, just, the usual hay fever stuff around here. And my wife says, here's some eye drops I got for you. And we talk about it for a few minutes, and for 3 days we've been getting nothing but eye drop ads falling, into our Google pages and everything. I'm kind of like, yep, the interweb is listening. So, anywho, yep, I've missed a couple. I can't really read while I'm chatting, so I'm going to catch up on a couple of comments. But who whacked who? I must have missed some of this. Are you talking about Joe Flynn? Because I know he died. They found him dead in his pool from a heart attack. Oh, Ray Liotta died. Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah, Ray. Yeah, like I say, more funerals, less weddings. Come on, people, quit dying on me. He made such a good mobster, He was a good fellow. But, which, by the way, if you've been watching The Offer about the making of The Godfather, I love movies about how they make movies, but this is about as much a real mob flick as it is about making one. But I'll let you guys see it for yourselves. Really good. At least I think so. Hey, John. Yes, the Airliner builds. Since I don't go to work until next month, I plan to get it out either the last day of this month or the first day of next month. So the next few days, 3 days left. And we've got a lot of great entries. A few more things are just trickling in today. And you guys have really covered a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, we got shorts. Of course, we got the Concorde. We've got several Heracles. I'm actually, even though I've already got my submissions done, I have a DC-7 that I would like to get done in time. It's that Rodin kit, but I don't think that's going to happen because I still have to finish my Canadian build. And it's making progress, but the Rodin kit, I want to do it up. One of my FOs flew a DC-7 for, I think it was Antilles Airways out of Puerto Rico. Real simple paint job, and I was thinking, maybe hurry up, maybe I can get that done. I'm not going to get the Heron done because what I've decided is I'm going to save the Heron for the kit bash because I'm going to make a turboprop Super Heron with some modifications, and I'm already working on wingtip mods and turning those gypsies into turboprops and a few other things. So we'll see how that pans out. But that's speaking of which, I added 2 other things to the builds for next year. So in fact, I think I already have in the comments section. But yeah, I posted. Okay, we're gonna. I'd already told you guys we were gonna do an ugly aircraft build May of next year. We're gonna do a movie scene, and I think it was OT sent us my wife and I some movies. Anyway, one of the movies you guys sent me was they were expendable, and we watched that today. And when the Kingfishers painted up as Japanese roofs were attacking the PT boats, I was like, if you had a model Kingfisher and a model PT boat, you could make a cool diorama out of that about the movie, put it the Kingfisher and Japanese markings. And I was like, hey, there's an idea for a build, a movie scene. So and it can be any movie you like. So sky's the limit. Just a scene from a movie in styrene. And yes, if you do a kaiju like a Godzilla or something that has a base, that would count, but I would think you would want to add something to it to make it a little more than just that. But a movie scene. So, I just learned that. I think I knew this, but I'd forgotten. My wife's, my late father-in-law, back when he was in Venezuela, he had, my wife was telling me that he had a bunch of the Aurora monster models. That was the first time she'd ever seen Quasimodo. She's a little girl. She didn't know what it was. And whole story behind that. But and I was like, you don't think of a lot of hobby shops down in Venezuela, but I guess they build models down there too. But he, being in the oil business, sometimes came to America. He traded with people. And I was wondering if he had gotten those kits from a local hobby shop or if he had to trade for them because they're a port city, maybe some sailor or had some friend who apparently he was very into it. And I'm just wondering, okay, so was that, she has no idea because she remembers they were probably built before she was born. But so that was kind of I was like, wow, be kind of cool to get information on people in other countries who maybe don't have the big modeling community we have in some countries. How do they get their models, And I can remember when my brother came back from the World Jamboree from Japan and brought me my first Tamiya kit because they were just made their way into the country. They were much cheaper in Japan. So anyway, getting back to what we're talking about, though, is that except for a couple of companies like Anagram and maybe Fantastic Plastic that makes limited runs of these off kits, there's no, they can really be hard to research. There just aren't the resources, the photos, and everything that you need. And that goes, of course, goes for cars and anything else, ships. And for people who have these skills to scratch build a real item, you know, where do you get the plans for? How do you know how to detail it? If there's no photos available, it's just best guess. So, I mean, yeah, you get to use your imagination, but sadness, it's not necessarily accurate. Which, I mean, if you're going to build something like that, of course, these airplanes were vaporware; they never got made. But beyond the model stage, you know, would it have looked like that? You can look at it one two ways. It's either, oh my gosh, I don't know how to mark it correctly, but then, well, since it never got fielded, you can really mark it however you want because there is no incorrect. It's two different ways of looking at it: glass half full, glass half empty. But I was just thought that was a pretty cool thing there. So, you know, what do you do with a hard to research kit? Which brings back the next question of underrepresented kits. Now, personally, for myself, I think general aviation is what's underrepresented. But I was having a chat with one of the car guys, and he was saying, he mentioned talking about like modeling Indy cars. And at first I thought, yeah, that's a little underrepresented. He goes, no, it really wasn't. Indy cars were really big, hit their zenith in the 80s. And I think about it, a lot of the old kits were IndyCar style racers, or, you know, but a lot of them were old moldings that just kept changing hands. But now you look, most of the IndyCar stuff, Tamiya, Fujimi, they're expensive. And clearly it's got a following because IndyCar is doing quite well in Formula One. And I was kind of, because it's not really my thing, I was really kind of shocked how many kits there are out there. And you have some cars like the Chaparral that, man, everybody made a model of that thing. Of course, it's so cool. But I was just curious what you guys thought are underrepresented genres. For me, it's general aviation. There are hundreds of small planes, like general aviation aircraft, that don't get made. And another field is a lot of modern cars and trucks. I mean, like pickup trucks. I mean, there aren't very many versions of things like the Ford Ranger or the Pinto. I mean, I imagine there's a few kits of them out there. I seem to recall seeing them. If you wanted a Chevette, the only Chevette I remember being made was with a Joey Chitwood. I think they made his stunt team car or whatever. But I think they might have made I'm pretty sure somebody made a model of the Pacer. Maybe it's my imagination. But it just seems like what you might call the plain Jane vanilla cars tend to be a little underrepresented. Yeah, four-door, I agree, John. Four-door sedans are definitely underrepresented. When I wanted to make the Supernatural car, which they finally have made a kit of now that I've got the big die-cast job up on the shelf, a 67 Impala, you could get 67 Impala two-doors all day long. There weren't any four doors to be had, and there was one guy online was showing you how to convert them, and it's not a small process. The four-door Polara that I wanted to do, I did that two-door, and I was actually just the other day looking how would I convert that kit to a four-door, and you know, it wouldn't probably be as hard as the Impala because I think I don't think they changed the cab any, or at least not much, but still, you know, just why not? You know, four-door cars. A lot of people, well, they're not cool, they're not hip, people don't want to buy them. I'm like, I don't know, man. You know, four doors, most of us in station wagons, most of us rode in those things. We'd probably build one just because, oh, my mom used to have one of those or something like that. That's kind of what they say killed Johan. You know, they're doing the promos and selling models. Well, in the late 80s, well, John Hanley was getting old, but also, you know, the Sevilles and everything, all the cars just kind of looked the same. There wasn't a lot to them. They weren't selling that well because they weren't, they said nobody wanted to buy a model of their grandma's frumpy old lady car. And I was like, maybe not at the time, but I bet they would now, just if no other reason, nostalgia. I like the Crown Vic, and my sister-in-law said she didn't want a Crown Vic, even though it's a great car, because she goes, it's a frumpy old lady's car. And I used to be a cop. I'm like, no, it's a macho police car. So, you know, it's all in the eyes of the beholder. So, just reading here, 132nd cars under, I agree. The Indiana Jones German Flying Wing. How nobody's made that as a kit, I don't know. I see wooden ones, but I've never that. Yes, yeah. But they only started recently making the supernatural car, the baby, the metallic car, and but at least they're making a four door now. And of course, you can turn it into any Impala you want. John, everybody, it's John's birthday, Fast Sports birthday. Happy birthday, John. He's got to run, do stuff with the family. Thanks for dropping in. I appreciate it. There is a Pacer kit out there. Okay. So, let's see. Now, I have a story for you guys thinking of cars. This is kind of, we're going to be kind of going down the rabbit hole here. So forgive me for this, but I think you guys will get a kick out of this. I'm going to turn the camera and everything off for a second so I can show you this. Okay. Now, you want to talk about model building? This is an electric car that my dad made around 1960, 61. And that is my sister, just older than me, sitting on it. She's about 4 or 5 years old in this picture. This is made completely out of scrap parts, as you probably already guessed, with the galvanized pipe steering tiller and the electric motor, and of course the battery case in back, and whatever lawnmower tires he had laying around, and some 2x4s. Now, there's a reason I'm telling you this. My dad had been a model builder back when they built models completely out of wood. I need to make, I need to make a model out of that. That'd be the easiest thing in the world to make a model of. And you can tell by the cars in the background, it kind of dates the photo. This is my hometown of Quincy, Florida, right outside my grandmother's place at Ward's Lot. Now, hold on. I'm telling you all this for a reason. Okay. Now, this is me around that same time. All right. That's my oldest sister holding me, and the next oldest sister, the one that lives here in Jacksonville, they're holding my hand. Okay. Now, I want you to hold on to this image because this is about to get funny. I think you guys are going to get a giggle out of this. Okay. That is the rebuilt electric car. Apparently, my older sister drove it in the garage. The engine fried. A big puff of blue smoke came wafting out of the carport. And my dad rebuilt it, and he made it smaller and trimmer. And apparently got what I think was a wheel skirt off of a reasonably large airplane. Cut a cockpit into it, mounted the thing, and it's one wheel in back and two wheels up front. Wide open, this thing may have gone 3.5 miles an hour. If I remember, that dog was happy. I have a very faint recollection of it. Mind you, I was a toddler, okay? Now, you guys are going to love this, okay? Now, the picture I'm about to show you is actually my younger brother. I don't have a picture of me at this time. But I would have looked something like this, because he and I were virtually interchangeable at that age. Now, my sister that you see pictured there with the dog with a happy smile on her face used to chase me around the yard when I looked like that. Buddha belly and all, diapers, cloth diapers, rubber pants, the works. Okay? And because of that, I have basically although I loved it because it was exciting, because I love being the center of attention, even though they were trying to run me over in an electric car. But the result of that is I got like PTSD when I saw this. I wouldn't trade my childhood for anything. That is us taken just a couple of days ago. Sadly, that's at my buddy George's, the reception after his funeral. But we only live a mile apart from each other. But I thought you guys would just get a hoot out of envisioning, tubby little baby Max being chased around by a 3 mile an hour electric car. You just can't buy memories like that. Tell me we did not grow up in the greatest time in history. You realize what happened if you try to do that today? If you let your kid run around, oh my God, they call Health and Human Services. By the way, that vehicle in the background, that old pickup truck, we call it, the one in my dad's store, we called it the yellow truck. And that's like one of my first memories, the yellow truck. I've got some of the pictures that I gotta find out. Can anybody identify that truck offhand, just from the picture you got right there? I've got some other pictures of it that'll tell me what it is, but isn't that Buddha belly just adorable? And the difference is my younger brother, that's actually a picture of him, I think. My younger brother slendered out as he got older. I, on the other hand, remained faithful to the Buddha belly my whole life. Mini Zamboni, I love that. I thought you guys would have some fun with that. Anyway, welcome to America in the 60s. Oh, the best, only the best country ever. And then again, that's us today. So I thought we would just take a real spin down memory lane for a second. You guys would get a hoot. I told my sister I was going to talk about this. So it's an international. Okay. In other news, Hurricane Hobby has some paints, and I almost grabbed all of the black they had. They'd already sold some of it, but I decided to only get 2 bottles because, you know, and semi-gloss is all I get, but at least they're getting deliveries. All right. So that's a step in the right direction. And speaking of that very thing, some of you guys can already identify these models from the price tag and from what little's available. We're going to talk about it in a second. Japan is sort of at war with itself with the models. You'll see one for $26 and one for $43. Well, they are both Japanese kits from top shelf Japanese companies. The Tamiya 172 Messerschmitt is only $26, and the A6M5 from Hasegawa is $43. Now, I'm sorry, and I'm not blaming the shop. They're just using the, you know, the manufacturer suggested retail price. But I cannot reconcile on almost doubling of the price. They're both 1/72 scale. I'm sorry, Hasegawa. I mean, you make a great kit. Yeah, sometimes they're a little tight on the fits, but you got to be kidding me. And Tamiya, we all know they're kind of the bellwether. And, if I may run down a tangent real quick, I was reading the book on that horsepower race book for the secret horsepower race of World War II. If you look under the Messerschmitt, you see the size of those radiators sticking out of the wings. I was just reading the section where Milch was ripping the hide off of Messerschmitt and a couple of his, and Franca and a few of the engineers, because they shot down some Spitfires, and the Spitfires had radiators that were half the size of the German radiators, ergo half the drag. Just kind of a side note. And a lot of it gets down to the materials the Germans are using. But I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. I just wanted, while I had that picture up. But anywho, and that got me to start snooping around on the prices in the shop. Now, mind you, these are all... well, I agree everything's getting expensive, but there's no reason for Hasegawa to be damn near, pardon my French, be almost twice as much as Tamiya. I mean, I'm sorry, guys, but you just ain't all that in a bag of chips. Now, I realize the Tamiya mold may be older. You know, it's paid for itself a long time ago. I'm guessing that might have something to do with it. My understanding is that A6M5 is a newer pressing, but or a newer mold, but I could be wrong. Now, here we have the Atlantis Seamaster, you know, an old kit that's just repopped by Atlantis. And I came a hair's breadth from buying it after watching Mike Machat's video on the Navy amphibious jets. But I was like, I have got a couple of hundred kits on the shelf passing a judgmental eye. Plus, if I walk home paying money for a kit after as generous as you guys have been to me, you know, the kit detector in our house is going to go off, and I'm going to get that look that none of us like to get, and you know the look I'm talking about. But I mean, this is a $22 kit, and you can't tell me that that's not, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm going to get that kit eventually, but it's just one of those things that you're getting a cool model. Yeah, it's an older pressing, but it for my money, you know, you got to give Atlantis credit. No matter whatever you think of it, they do offer one of the best bangs for the buck out there, and that is a super cool airplane too, in my humble opinion. Of course, if I was to have bought it and walked home, you know, like I say, the model kit detector would have gone off, and I'd have been in Dutch. So I was like, nope, may not be able to say no to pizza, donuts, ice cream, or anything else with carbs or fatteningness. But I was able to put it back on the shelf, and I was trembling when I did it. This was another kit that I wanted to get because who doesn't like big, heavy German armor? And it's, what is that, $51. Now that kit's been $45 to $51 for years. So clearly they paid for the molds a long time ago. But when you get right down to it, given that it's 1/35th scale and it's Tamiya and everything, that's really, in my humble opinion, not a bad deal. I've seen, generally speaking, tanks don't seem to be as expensive as airplanes. I don't think cars and airplanes seem to be most expensive, but the the Tamiya kits. I never thought, these are words I never thought was going to leave my mouth, but Tamiya is just starting to be one of the better deals around. I mean, they can't touch Atlantis, but they're Tamiya. So what say you guys? What has the world turned into when, spending $652 for a tank, a Tamiya model tank is actually coming across your mind as a good deal? And, I know they were the bad guys, but God, that's a beautiful tank. I know it was a mechanical disaster, but tell me that is just not cool. My brother had the Hunting Tiger, the big, the one with the big fixed mantlet and the 5-inch 128mm gun on it when I was a kid. And I just remember, and it's just a big hollow shell. But probably one reason it's not that expensive. Because I don't know if that one comes with an interior. I'm thinking for $51, probably not. But you can't see the inside anyway, so who cares? But if I know these days, I will have this Panzer. Now, in other stuff, Glue Trooper sent me a bunch of pictures. I've actually seen this, and it might have been I think it's at the March Air Force Base Museum. This is one-to-one model building. Now, some people have said this was a procedures trainer for the Air Force, but I know this is what they used to film the movie Strategic Air Command with Jimmy Stewart. And looking at it, it looked like it was something that was made by the aircraft maker, not by a props house. But these are props from movies. And the reason I want to include this is, you guys know I have a fascination with movie props, but they're models. Even if they're full scale, they're still models. And I don't know if that X-Wing has any screen time. That looks familiar, but I can't place it. The blue thing, the jet thing. It's like I don't know. I've seen it, but I don't know where. Yeah, of course. Standard issue TIE fighter, bad guy, which is pretty easy to tell. They're the ones dressed in black. I think some of these are replica props. I'm not really sure. A lot of them are in museums, but we all know where that's from. One of my favorite movies ever. Bigelow Aeronautical Corporation in the room. The Rocketeer. Man, that jacket is faded. And I guess those are models hanging in the background. Those real airplanes are models. There's the Jenny. I mean, I guess those are RCs they filmed the movie with, but they look good. Wow, that looks good. Of course, and the Batman. I just thought you guys might enjoy seeing this, but anywho, I'm still fascinated with Hollywood model making. A model like this Bat Boat, I know it's just a hollow fiberglass shell, but it probably costs $50,000 to put together. Plus, you got to pay the people, so double or triple that. Amazing, but tell me it just doesn't look cool. Not my favorite Bat vehicle. That would be the Bat Copter. Actually, my favorite would be the Bat Cycle with this little suicide sidecar. But anywho, these props, when a lot of times when you see them, well, that's the same kit. That's got to be the same kit I have on my shelf. It's got to be the monogram kit. Funny when you build one, you do it. There's the X1 from the movie The Right Stuff, and man, it looks so good on screen, but when you see it just laying out there like that, it's not really quite so impressive. One of the things about these movie props is when I see them up close and personal, like, oh man, that doesn't look so great. Yeah, but the camera can fool you. But there's modeling in the 1-to-1 scale. Still, that would look good in my driveway, don't you think? This is from that second Flight of the Phoenix movie, and that, I guess, is fiberglass. Obviously not a flying airplane, but then it's supposed to be a C-119 in the second movie instead of the C-82 in the first movie. But anywho, Hollywood magic, baby. Yeah, they build for the camera. You're absolutely right. And the camera misses a lot. Anyway, I just thought you guys might take a peek at that. Wanted to share those. Okay, now back to modeling news. Let me turn my stuff back on. So, Oh gosh, my eyes are not what they once were. Trying to, they made the print on this program a wee bit on the smallish side. Okay, where's my? There we go. There it is. I'm back. Wow, it's magic. So I got an email from Nick Argento, and this is an old picture of him in his office, Glencoe. And there's a lot been going on over at Glencoe. He has been making models, and he has run out of the was the Retriever rocket and a couple others. I think the Coast Guard boat and a few others. And he wants to do some maintenance on the molds before he puts them back into production. But he's got some new stuff coming. God bless him. He's got a Ginny, and he had new box art done for it, and that's the Ginny, and which is, I'll probably get one as soon as I see one on the shelf. A lot of rigging if you want to rig it, but an airplane whose importance in American aviation history cannot be overstated. And one of the things he's done is he's come up with a variety of decal options for it. Right out of the great Waldo Pepper. So he sent me these pictures, and so two of them are military, and the rest are all barnstormers. Which, gotta be honest, it wouldn't break my heart to get them all, and wouldn't break my heart to get them all and to just build everything. Probably only make one military, but nice thing though is that about a plane like this is you get the barnstormer decals. You can paint it up, put your own name on it, make it however you want. And actually, one of them, that was like an Argentine tail on that one. So, I'm sorry, those are Argentine military. Those are the barnstormers. And so many barnstormers use Jennies, and there's so many pictures of them out there that, if you want to make your own decals, you could make just all kinds of different schemes with that thing. And of course, every time they would crack it up and reskin it, they'd repaint it. So even the same barnstormer has a half dozen different paint schemes. And fortunately, cameras were becoming common back then, so you got a lot of options. But I'm glad to see that he's still expanding the product line a little bit. Remember, he's really tied up because he also owns a plastic injection company. He doesn't just do models, so he take other contracts. And with the vid, he's been making a lot of medical components, which obviously by a narrow margin is more important than model airplanes. But he's staying busy, a lot going on. I think he moved the operation of the town over from Worcester, so he's not actually in Worcester anymore. But I want to thank him. If the last time I was in Worcester the other day was unexpected, and so if I end up there again with a headway, I'm going to give him a call and see if there's some possibility we might be able to get together. Speaking of which, Atlantis was showing some new box art also that they're, let's see here. They are advertising this on their website. Now I've got one of these on the shelf that I haven't painted, and I like how they're talking about STEM, so they're smart enough to stay with popular current trends. Maybe they'll help them move some new model, move some styrene. But of course, the one I have is a Russian American one. I don't have that actual one, and if I see that, I'll probably have to pick it up. That and the P6M. And although let's see, there's one other piece of artwork they had on their website today that was pretty good, and that's new artwork for the A26, and it looks like digital art, but that's nice. And of course, if I get an A26, I'm going to do it up like with the FAL, Fuerza Aeronautica Liberación, the guys, the Bay of Pigs, Cuban paint scheme, do it up like that. And it's funny, that the A26 or that's A20, and then later B26 again was. It was a really good airplane. I mean, it's used in 3 wars, but it just never seems to get much attention. It's like it's not a sexy looking airplane, I guess. for some reason, it's kind of like this forgotten medium bomber that was everywhere doing everything. And of course, they had wings falling off of them by the Vietnam War, so they had to have things as a D. Howard company make huge modifications to spruce up the wing spars. But typical Ted Smith design, you know, fast as a bullet. And mid-wing, Ted Smith loved that mid-wing big engine design. But by the way, I know most of you guys know this, but just for those who don't, in World War II, that was the A-26 Invader by Douglas, and you had the B-26 Marauder by Martin. The Marauders were destroyed at the end of the war, and there's a whole story behind that, which I think was just a crime against history, but it wasn't worth bringing them back to the States because we didn't have any use for them. Jets were coming in, and they were not. The airplane was still fast enough and deadly enough they didn't want them falling into the wrong hands. And although it's gone from YouTube, there used to be footage of the Army Corps of Engineers, some old 8mm footage. They put explosives in the cockpits and just detonated them. And I think that was the last time I was in the fetal position crying. So there are some things I should not watch. But then the A-26 stayed in inventory. Well, when the Air Force did their redesignation, I guess in 47, they redesignated it from A-26 to B-26, and so the Air Force now had its second B-26. So that's how that happened, and it does cause confusion with historians from time to time. But anywho, nice box art. I'm glad to see they're investing in some new box art, and you know that if you're, I don't think there's any box art that would make me buy a B-26. I'd have to want the B-26, but with one exception, and that is I found an old monogram one, because that was one of Monogram's early full plastic kits. If I found an old Monogram one, but I'd buy that just more because it was, you know, vintage than because the artwork. It was kind of odd. They had one artwork, the thing's just taxiing in like after a mission. I was kind of like, not their usual scene of excitement. But anywho, glad Atlantis is keeping the ball rolling here. Yeah, they bulldozed P-38s in the Philippines. I was telling my wife after we watched today, we watched, they were expendables. At the end of the war, most of the PT boats were taken out and burned. And it was for the same reason. A lot of folks don't realize that, like, the PT boats were fairly, because they're wooden, a lot of maintenance. And the Navy was always dubious about them to begin with. And they didn't, the brass didn't really have a love affair with them. They were what we had on hand. They had a job to do, but once the war was over, they weren't blue water vessels, and they were what today we call leader out vessels, you know. And they just like, they wear out quick. They're high maintenance. The wood rots. Just we don't want the locals to have them because they might do, you know, start some shenanigans with them. Handful of them survived because they had some uses for them. That's why there's so few in museums today. What's it, like only 7 or 12 left in the world? And so they took them out and torched them. And like you say, they're crushing a lot of the equipment. We've all seen the Lend-Lease planes getting pushed off the back of carriers. I'll give myself. Oh, I'm going to cry. But that's... It's funny. It's just like that picture of my sister sitting in that little that little kitty car. This was, I believe, a wheel skirt from an airplane. Fairly, judged by the paint scheme, that's got to be what it was. And, you know, to take an expensive piece of shaped aluminum like that and just cut a hole in it to make a kid's go-kart, you know, you can see where he melted the rubber around it and everything so it would have the sharp edge. I remember that. But today, if you found an antique wheel skirt like that and said, hey, I want to cut it up, somebody would tackle you and sell your body parts on the open market. How dare you? It's a heresy. Back then, it was just an old leftover chunk of aluminum nobody needed. It takes 50 years or so for something for the value. That's kind of one of the reasons a lot of us won't throw away our old boxes and stuff. They're going to be worth something someday. I think probably will be. But I got an attic full of them. And Eduardo, this is going to be your inheritance. When you're my age, you'll be able to sell these or something, assuming anybody's even building models that are... God, I don't even think about that. You guys even think people will be building models in 50 years? I think so. I think there are always going to be people who have that creative artistic streak and interest and stuff like that. But the thing I'm driving at is we've all seen probably Raiders of the Lost Ark, the original, where the guy tells Indy, he talks about, I bought this cheap pocket watch, you know, it means nothing, a few dollars, but bury it in the sand for 1,000 years and let an archaeologist find it. Now it's a rare artifact. Time has a way of making things valuable, and maybe one could argue even showing you what is valuable. Those of us who like to collect old stuff start to realize the new stuff has value. I never thought that a Volkswagen Beetle, be a classic car. When I grew up, they were everywhere. Honda 65s. I don't know if there's a Honda 65 left in existence. For those who don't know, it's a little single cylinder, tiny little, kind of bigger than a moped, smaller than a real motorcycle. And my brother used to ride one, and they came in 2 colors, red and black. And there might be a model of them out there. But I remember seeing the college students things, the parts pulled off of them. They'd sell chunks. It was just a way to get around. They didn't think any more about that, and you'd think about a moped. Nowadays, if you had one in mint condition, I'll bet you could get something for it, or a Pacer, or the Germans call the Volkswagen the Kiefer, the little Beetles. And I have heard of aluminum houses. I saw the thing. I also saw the documentary on those prefab aluminum houses that actually were kind of cool. They didn't catch on, but it was an interesting idea. Good, that's the way to go, plastic. Oh, by the way, thanks again for the Spitfire. I appreciate that. I don't know if you were around earlier. I was talking about it earlier, but let's see. For now, busy. No worries, TG. Guys, this is all for good fun. Come and go as you like. We don't take roll call here. So, Ken might be getting home in about 10 minutes, and I'm sorry I'm missing a lot of the comments. But, yeah. Well, people were making models hundreds of years ago, out of wood or whatever. They didn't really probably call... Well, actually, I guess they did call them models. And even was that horrible movie that they made recently of The Lone Ranger with Arlie Hammer and Johnny Depp. An abysmal movie, but I liked that it had the wind-up model train and everything. I was like, the things like model trains and model ships go back forever. So I think model building's been with us for most of our... It's like painting. It's just something that we do. So I'm sure it will be around, and who knows what they'll have to model. But... that brings up the big argument about Oh, there he is. Oh. Hey.
Hey.
All right. It's Ken, everybody. Ken, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late.
Nah, no worries. We know you. I already made your excuses. I sent the note to the teacher. Come on. There we go. All right. Okay, let me put this over here. And give me another voice check. Taz, tell me if you can hear Ken.
Testing. 1, 1, 2, 2.
Okay.
We need Ken vote now.
All right, Ken, start reading the comments and keep me straight. So anyway, I think we'll be modeling in the future, and I'm glad to see the companies like Atlantis and Glencoe and the others, the smaller companies are still working on new stuff. So kudos to them for that. Now,
it's Ken.
Ooh.
Good to know y'all like having me around.
Yeah, we tolerate you. That kind of brings up, huh?
Somebody has to.
Yeah. Now that brings up another little subject of interest. I was sent this by somebody. I don't know if you'd really call this a model because it's one piece. It's really more of a paint by numbers, but it is injected styrene. And this is a voodoo not voodoo, it's a tribal mask. Now, I'm not sure, I guess you could call it a one-piece model. But anyway, the thing, it falls under the category of, just kind of like weird kits. I mean, I can't get them to make a model of the Luscombe, the airplane I learned to fly in, but they'll make that. But then again, that can hide under the educational banner. So, maybe you sell some more of them, but it's just that. So the question was, what is the weirdest thing you've ever seen a kit made of? Now, take a minute to think about that, because that's actually a fairly target-rich environment. But I don't think this was just an example. I don't really think this is the weirdest thing, although it definitely registers on the weird meter. But you know, you got a lot of young people that are interested in culture. It's kind of a way of traveling without going anywhere. But I'm trying to think of what's the weirdest thing I've ever seen a model of. Now, all the human body parts make sense because they're educational. Leaving? Okay. Tiki Bar Decos, there you go. Hey, we'll look at it. It kind of does have that look to it. Need someone sober around. Oh, God, take time. Walla walla bing bang. All right.
I thought that was my job.
Seaweed. Somebody made a model of seaweed. Oh, the Bandai cup of soup. Yes. That was what I was thinking about. I used to eat cup of soup and ramen noodles all the time. And I'm at the Bandai store and I see a model of cup of soup. And I'm like, man, you know, what? I still can't entirely process that one. I mean, can you imagine the pitch meeting for that one over at Bandai? So what are we going to make, guys? What are your ideas? And the guy sitting there eating a cup of soup. He didn't think of anything. He didn't do his homework. This? Oh, well. I wonder how many of those they sell. Gorn model. By the way, if you guys saw Strange New Worlds, the Gorn have made their presence known. Go too far away and click at other models.
I don't get Disney Plus.
Model of an airbrush pay spaceship. Oh, now that is actually kind of cool. Yes, folks have made the airbrush, they make a spaceship out of the airbrush. Japan still sells models of adult porn stars. I'm not going to call that weird, given some of the stuff I've seen in Japan, including some of their old art. That's as far as I'm going to go with that.
Dead mouse.
It doesn't care. but you see, but when you take that into the, you got the dead panther with the monogram tripacer. It came with the two hunters, and they had a dead panther. So taken in context of the model, that's different. But I don't know if I'd say weird. Given the, I mean, I bought a lot of models of a 50-meter tall lizard, so which we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Granted, true.
There was a model released recently of a ball of rolled up paper. Okay, we may have a winner. A ball of rolled up paper. Yeah, Warhammer. 40,000 were lost on this little skirmish. Yeah, Warhammer can be dark, all right. Yeah, the Iwata spaceship.
1-to-1 model of Ken.
Verlinden used to make an accessory of Playboy magazine with a centerfold open. Oh, I consider that essential hardware. Oh, God. Tarzan, yeah. But a dead animal in a hunting or a fighting scene or something, it's like making a dead dinosaur. If you've got a T-Rex standing on it, it makes sense. If you just sold the dead animal, yeah, that'd be a little weird. I think the rolled up paper may have taken the lead.
I don't know. The naked anime girls kind of have their own little flourish.
The Gorn aren't supposed to be known until Kirk encountered. It's funny you should mention that, Rob Altus, because somebody just I didn't watch the whole video. They're talking about that Strange New Worlds just did the biggest continuity ever. That's okay. Spock wasn't supposed to have a sister, so it's TV.
Hey, what about that monster model kit that raised all kind of controversy that had the saw, the pendulum?
Yeah, Dr. Deadly and Dr. Deadly's Dungeon and the Victim and the Frank on Vampirella. Oh man, that had the moms out there with pitchforks and banners, protesting Nabisco. I love the when the head of Nabisco called Diker over at Aurora, like, what'd I do? And Diker just like, pray for rain. I was like, wow. Hear that bus coming? I'm gonna push you under it. A model of rolled up paper though. Anything's possible 3D, yeah. Well, Barbie had a 1-to-1.
Well, somebody taped a banana to a wall and called it art.
Well, that's not a model, and that's not art. What was the great Jack Linwood said?
That's kind of the point I was making.
Yeah, but that's not a model. What is the great Jack Linwood said? If you want to throw spaghetti on the wall and call it art, go to Otis. I'm here to teach you how to be an illustrator, and I'm going to laugh all the way to the bank. Yeah, we were talking about the spaceship airbrush, and oh, by the way, my wife brought up an interesting thing. I don't know if I'll do it, but when we make the movie scene build next year, she's like, if you really want to be cool, you make the studio lights light up. I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. Lots of people saw the Gorn, they just didn't survive. Fair point.
Something that always, if we can take a slight tangent here about the Gorn, one thing that I always thought was weird.
Ken, we never go on tangents on this channel. Said no, man. Said no glue trooper ever.
Are you only allowed the tangents, or can I have one?
I'm Captain Tangent. You may tangent. You have permission to tangent, number one.
Can I be Lieutenant Tangent?
Lieutenant Tangent. You guess what, Ken? You just gave yourself a call sign.
Okay.
So, the Gorn.
The Gorn, yes. Back to the Gorn.
And don't you dare get into Gorn porn.
Because we tangented on a tangent. Whatever. Okay, the Gorn. The first episode, they had, they were, how the two ships got together and they started making that web thing.
The Tholian web.
The Tholian web. It took a long time to make that thing. What made them think somebody was going to stay still long enough for them to complete that thing all the way around them?
Yeah, I was wondering about that myself. I was like, yeah, and what if that ship decides to move? Somebody just brought up the TR-3E triangular UFO kit, supposed to be our Mach 5 thing. I didn't put it in here, but I saw this and took a picture of it when I was at the hobby shop. So let me go ahead and get it. And it's from one of my favorite movies. Let's see, where is it? Okay, just somebody cue the girl from Ipanema while I'm trying to find this picture. Not that one. Ah, here it is.
No
okay.
Comments. Huh. Well, I guess that tangent fell flat. Although Alfred said I can be Captain Tangent and Ken to something. I can't even pronounce that.
Let me see if I can rotate this.
Hypotenuse?
Rotate.
Somebody else said I was being obtuse. I guess they're trying to merge the two together.
You were talking about the TRE-3, and this is built by the same people. This is from Atlantis. This is Earth versus the Flying Saucers. Now, I saw this. It's a $20 kit. And I love the movie. And another one I almost got because I was like, I just love that flick. But there was a whole flap because they don't give you any little alien guys. They just give you the flying saucer. And they, I guess, just didn't want to go through the expense of adding the mold. But I think it would have added a lot to the kit. Of course, a little clay or modeling putty turns just about any figure into one of those guys. But, okay. Here's what cracked me up. And it's actually kind of one reason I didn't get it. Hold on, I got to put this with it. Because okay, tick, 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 tick. Where is it, Max? Ah, nope. Yes, here it is. Okay, and rotate. This is a transform. Rotate it now and shrink it down. That's the whole kit right there. 3 parts. I mean, that's it. Well, I guess there's a 4th part. There's the laser ray. But I guess there's really not a lot to do to those things. But I don't know. Somehow I was like, I would have just liked a little. Although I probably get one at some point because, hello, it's sci-fi. And quite frankly, I think pretty good sci-fi. I don't think that movie gets enough respect. I know the name's a little hokey. That's a movie. Well, one could argue they did that movie. They did remake that movie with Mars Attacks, although tongue in cheek. But if I was going to remake a sci-fi movie, it would be Forbidden Planet, which you could do with modern CGI and everything. But I mean, it's still a model kit, and I got to admit, there's a certain quiche, is that the word I look? Sort of cutesy little value to all the movies. Actually, kind of dark when you get right down to it. I mean, hello, people dying.
The poster's not looking so great with dead people laying on the ground.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's kind of dark when you're like, I mean, it's kind of like Earth versus the Flying Saucers. How hokey, and you see how the body's strewn out. Okay, that's dark hokey. I'll probably get it at some point, just because I can. But well, that's actually not a bad segue to the next thing I was going to talk about.
Well, before we segue, I want to answer Barry.
Barry, okay. Hey, Barry.
Okay, Barry said in the episode they couldn't move because they were waiting for McCoy to come back so they could pull him out of the rift of dimension. Yeah, I get that. Why they had to stay there.
No. Kirk was in stasis. Yeah, but the question is, how do they know any ship would stay still long enough for him to do that?
Yeah. If that was their weapon, their go-to weapon to use to trap their enemy, the enemy is going to stay put a long time before they can actually enclose somebody in one of those things.
Then again, maybe there was something about that area of space that they knew that nobody else did. Who knows? It's again, after a while you just go, it's a TV show. Speaking of TV shows and movies, all right. Because this is the kind of thing I do. As you guys know, I'm a big Kaiju fan and sci-fi and everything. And a lot of people, because franchises like King Kong and Godzilla have gotten so popular, and Star Trek have all gotten so popular, that people try to find ways to scientifically justify what happens in the movies. And sometimes with considerable success, I might add. And I was watching the original Godzilla a while back when the tanks roll in and start shooting at him, or the jets attack him and chase him back in the ocean. And of course, they're highly ineffectual. And the only thing that fares worse than a tank in a Godzilla movie is a submarine. But then I realized something. I did the math. In the original 1954 movie, the tanks are chaffies, which we gave the Japanese after the war. In fact, those were real Army Japanese tanks in the deployment footage going out on maneuvers. Of course, they were model tanks on set, but with the monster. But you see him shoot at him and hit him, which is a nice change of pace. But you see his little pock marks, and all it does is irritate him. The tanks finally get smart and run away. So I did the math. A 75 millimeter shell on a 50 meter monster is smaller than one of us getting hit by a BB. So, and of course he's got the super thick hide because he lives deep, in the ocean and everything. So realistic, what it got me wondering is how come man-made weapons are always so ineffectual in these movies? Obviously, it's plot armor. They want human, the modern military to be defenseless so that you have, an exciting movie. But in, reality, Shaggy Buds, don't go there. Godzilla vs. Starship. The diorama Monica wouldn't let me make, right?
No. What?
Remind me of that when I'm done with this first thought, or I'll tangent off and we'll never get back. We'll be lost in space. But it was I did the math. Basically, imagine if somebody the size of a gopher was trying to stop you with a BB gun, and how much success they would have. And that's why, because tank rounds are made to knock out tanks. Human weapons are made to kill humans. Jets are made to shoot down other jets, or the rockets are made to take out infantry. They're not designed to pull off thick-hided, heavily scaled, radioactive, 50-meter tall monsters that are so big that the mere size of the weapons is virtually ineffective. So it makes sense. I've survived the BB gun battle and got both eyes still. Hallelujah. But it makes, and I know people, when they're fans of a movie franchise, they want to defend it, but it actually makes sense that the military weapons were not effective. And then, of course, eventually in later episodes, they made weapons like the cadmium shell and everything, missile and all that stuff that were made for dealing with the threat, and they were much more successful. So I just thought that was an interesting point out. People go, oh, the tanks are useless. Of course they're useless. They're supposed to knock out other tanks. They're not supposed to take on this gigantic beast. They're, to paraphrase young Frankenstein, hearts and kidneys are tinker toys. I'm talking about the human brain. Okay.
How about an anti-ship missile?
Yeah, that'd be about like you getting hit with a 22. And wearing, by the way, Godzilla's head-to-toe body armor also. So don't forget that. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. The bigger missiles and stuff did have an effect, but there's a difference between you're not going to get the kill shot with them. They just don't have the velocity, the capacity to penetrate. Now, when you get to Shin Godzilla, he's so dense that 30 millimeter rounds are bouncing off like rain. So almost too much plot armor there. Now, the diorama that I could not make. Okay, you guys know I'm planning to chop that Polar Lights Godzilla that was given to me in half because I already got one on the shelf. I'm going to chop it in half so I can have basically a waist high one for posing with model ships and stuff, coming out of the water. And the bottom half, I'm probably going to make the famous diorama of Haruo Nakajima walking in the suit. Monica's already picked out a doll for me. But before I came up with that idea, I was going to build the legs and the tail, scoop them out, cover the inside with spaghetti-looking plastic and stuff, and paint it. And I was going to have the Starship Enterprise passing by overhead, because you're going to have like this gouged out Godzilla bottom. And we'll go, don't screw with no one screws with the Enterprise. So I had already thought about the Starship versus Godzilla. In fact, I have a Starship that lights up painting up here on the wall, and I used to have, and he's firing his phasers, and I used to have the Godzillas up here on the shelf, and I actually had him like he was shooting the phasers down at him. And here's a quick picture of the
I was going to say Garfield came up with the perfect reason.
They can't really. Yeah, it's too bright. What's that?
He's protected by the rules of sequel films.
That's right. The ultimate plot armor. I mean, if they can bring Barbossa back from the dead in Pirates of the Caribbean, and so that's but I know the words only a nerd would say. These are the truest of nerd words. If Godzilla was real.
You couldn't see that.
What
you were just showing us came through.
No, it's too bright. I don't. Maybe can you dim this? Is there a way to? I'm sure there's got to be a brightness knob on here.
Yeah. While you're doing that, somebody else brought an interesting point.
Uh-huh.
350, not necessarily 357, but around that caliber will take out an elephant.
Can the kind of round that will take out an elephant, which is like a 335, isn't a pistol cartridge. I mean, it's got the 335 projectile, but it's a big rifle casing slap full of gunpowder. Okay, the projectile isn't that big, but it's moving 3,500, 4,000 feet per second as opposed to 1,400 feet per second. That how you physics, how big of a difference that makes. The energy employed, but also the penetration. And by the way, Godzilla's hide is thicker than an elephant. He's beyond a pachyderm. And because an elephant, it's still just skin. And I mean, if a tiger can slice through it, so what do we gallery? Okay. I was just going to point out that I have that Enterprise picture, and it lights up, fire the phasers.
People getting some really creative with some ways to take out Godzilla.
Oh, Death Star. Yeah, the Death Star can take out the whole planet. I'm pretty sure the Death Star. I think the Enterprise could do it. I mean, he took on Vol, and he was sort of a lizard head. A-10 firing depleted uranium shells. You see, I think those would go through, although they didn't in Shin Godzilla, but the original Godzilla they would. The only problem is compared to him, they're pretty small. Although at the rate of fire, you might get enough damage to get him to bleed out. But they didn't have those in 1954, and the 20 millimeters were just ticking him off. Burt Gummer, there you go. You see, there's your ultimate weapon. And you know, Burt Gummer was not. He's the only common thread in all 6 or 7 Tremors movies, and by the third one, he was the main star. That's Michael Gross. And the funny thing is that the people who made the original didn't, and you know, Fred Ward just passed away also from that movie. But the people who made the movie never quite understood why Burt was so popular when he's supposed to be this cantankerous loner. And you don't get it. The same reason Archie Bunker was so popular. When Norman Lear did All in the Family, he wanted to make this, you know, annoying guy. He thought, you know, that no one would like it. He didn't understand that half of middle America related to the guy because they were in the same situation. And so this guy who was supposed to be given 2 vaccine shots, this guy was supposed to be like this annoying protagonist, wound up being the most popular character in the show. And the same thing with Burt. You know, a lot of people look at him and go, hey, when this tragedy hit, Burt was the only one that was ready for it in any way, shape, or form. So there you go. So they kind of rewrote his character. Well, I don't know if they rewrote him. They matured his character a little bit, and he's the only common thread through there.
Somebody had a good way to get rid of Godzilla.
What's that?
Put a red shirt on him.
Well, that's just cheating. Phaser bait, you are the cutest little phaser bait. Your last name will soon be late. Ain't that great? Don't go on an away party.
Somebody else suggested transporting a photon torpedo into the middle of them.
Assuming a transporter could penetrate his hide, that would probably work. But you know, Star Trek would. Monica said I could not do that diorama, and I quote, Godzilla commands more respect than that. Respect is dignity. How can I argue with that? But I can tell you, and by the way, guys, I literally have a gigantic Star Trek poster right here in front of me above the computer. This ought to be interesting.
Well, we see the one behind you too.
Well, those are just model box tops, but this is literally what I'm looking at. There's the computer that I'm using to run the live stream, and on the wall above it is this 25th anniversary VHS poster that we got from my brother's friend Blaine. Actually, when I say we got it from him, he left it at my mom's house when he moved out. Dibs. But I can tell you why Star Trek Enterprise could not take Godzilla. Be a violation of the Prime Directive.
That's almost as good as the sequel rules.
Yep. So, the second shot took out my sister. She had her Gojira moments.
What are Gojira moments?
That's the Japanese for Godzilla. Supposedly, I don't speak any Japanese other than sayonara and konnichiwa, but supposedly it stands for whale ape. It goes back to the early drawings where his head was shaped like a mushroom cloud, but they thought that was a little too spot on. Originally, Godzilla was supposed to be an octopus, if I remember correctly. Got the book right over here. I was just putting it on the shelf today. Now, by the time you get to this Godzilla, Astro Monster, you know, the rules have kind of changed, but which was actually, I think, later Ghidorah. But and that kit comes with a paper Godzilla and the paper towers. It's really kind of cool. I used to have all that stuff up here, but I moved it out to the pilot room. And the model of the Jeep is just the recoilless rifle Jeep that MPC already made. They had to get a Godzilla license to do that, though. And they did it because that Jeep has about 5 seconds of screen time in the movie, and they show you some screen grabs. In fact, right there it is. That's the Jeep, the model, and there's Ghidorah. So anywho, Ghidorah, however you say it. So it means whale ape. Okay, yeah, that's
Jeff 72 said, "So you're invoking the Prime Directive? You're just shooting dirty pool, Max."
Well, one works with the tools one has. But he's threatening to wipe out Tokyo. The Japanese can rebuild. There's only one good year. We're not allowed to interfere. Now, we're going to take another little time travel in the Wayback Machine. I think you guys are going to like this. Identify that airplane. I'll give you one quick look, real quick. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Let's see, before we get into it, who can identify that. I ignore directives. They're more like suggest guidelines than actual rules. Gremlins eat, well, something's eating them. They actually had a Superman versus Godzilla comic book, and I think Superman won.
I would hope so. Otherwise, kind of limit the franchise.
Sky King.
What was that?
Kirby. What? That's what I'm asking you. Identify it. You get into this.
It's like a variation of a Beach 18.
All right. I'll put it back up so everyone can take a nice long look at it. We're going to talk about this. And this does relate to models. I'm going to get there in a second. But I want to get... somebody will reckon it. Almost. You're close. The P2V Harpoon. There you go. All right. That is a Harpoon, which is a sister airplane to the Hudson, so that's why they look so much alike. So here's the dealio on this. I was in Bainbridge, Georgia let's see, it's before I went in the Army. My dad was teaching me to fly, so it would have been around 73 or 74. Excuse me. And we're flying over the Bainbridge Airport on our way back to Quincy. Bainbridge is about 20 miles north. And I look down and I see an entire squadron of medium bombers from World War II parked on the Bainbridge ramp. And I just thought, ooh. So Dad's like, fine, we're in the Luscombe, we'll go take a look. So we land, taxi up. My dad immediately, they're Vega Venturas. Okay, what's a Vega Ventura? And it's one of those forgotten airplanes, like the A-26. It never gets any love. The only time I even heard one mentioned in the movie was in Jaws, and he goes, when he's talking about, Quint's talking about when they're in the water, he goes, pilot flew by Ventura. I still remember the pilot, young fella. So this was a Lockheed product that was used by the Navy. And you know what? Let me zoom in. Let me make this a little bigger. Now, you can actually see on the nose section, just behind the red curved stripe, you can see one of the 4 or 2, however many it had, gun ports. Right? They were still on there. And this, now, if you look at the wing tip, you will notice that something ain't quite right about that wingtip.
I mean, that round hole sticking out of there?
It's actually a pipe sticking out where they clipped a little bit of the wingtip off. That is a tube that sticks out. Now, if you look under the belly of the airplane, you'll see a crop duster spreader. Okay? These airplanes were optimized for flying over the state forest and putting out a chemical that killed fire ants. There were about 12 or 16 of them. There were a bunch of them parked out there. Now, if you look under the wing and just in front of the tail on the fuselage, you'll see this blue diamond. Right?
Is that some kind of hazard symbol or something?
No. That actually is... Every airplane had a different color and shape symbol, more or less from a deck of cards, except they had different colors. So you could have like blue diamond, red. One of them actually had red circles, like it was in Japanese markings. Red circle, white diamond, blue diamond. And it was a way to identify which airplane was which. Okay, because you're not going to read that N number with it flying over 200 miles an hour. And Georgia, of course, being Georgia, has a problem with fire ants. So the solution is, let's get this, of course, this was in the 70s. This was just an old airplane at the time. It didn't have near the collector's value it has today. But, so they used them to fight fire ants. And over time, as we go back over the next year or two, every time we go out there, there'd be one less airplane, one less, until finally there was only one left. One day, I couldn't resist. I was older. It was a few years later because I was 16 because I went out there by myself. Maybe I was 14 when I went into this. So it would have been about 75. But anyway, I finally couldn't resist anymore. No one was around because it's Bainbridge Airport, nobody out there. I jumped up on the wing and climbed. And they have a hatch on top of the cockpit. Popped the hatch, jumped in the cockpit, and I was like, ugh! You know, and that step under the belly, under the you cannot. Oh, by the way, when you're sitting in that airplane, you cannot see crap to taxi out of. You're blind as a bat. I mean, look at your eye line. You literally cannot see the ground. All you see is the instrument panel and the nose out in front of you, which I think is one reason the hatch opened. I'm not sure, but I think the pilots may have taxied those things standing up in an open hatch. But anyway, my dad's like, don't touch any of this stuff because it uses poison to kill fire ants. That's pretty potent stuff. Of course, they'd wash them down when they got back, and I had enough sense not to touch anything. Well, if you look at that step under the tail, it's a little hard to make out, but that actually, it's painted over glass, plexiglass, and that was where the rear gunner, and of course he shot downward, and didn't have a lot of defensive guns on it, but it was primarily made for the attack, which is why it had the forward-firing cannons or machine guns or whatever the armament was, I forget offhand. But eventually, the last one I think was sold as, I don't know if it was sold as scrap or a couple of them got restored back to their military configuration due to the air show circuit, but it's not one of those airplanes that's in big demand. So, and big radials are expensive to keep running, but it is a cousin to the big. It is definitely a cousin to the Lodestar. A lot of common parts, and but it's actually a Vega Ventura bomber, and given its relationship to a Lodestar, you probably could have made some sort of corporate aircraft out of it back in the day. Lodestar had the same base fuselage without the step for the gun, not a whole lot. Lodestars were used as airliners. I actually know a guy that flew them for National Airlines, and I think they had one go off the runway in Tallahassee back in the 40s or 50s. But anywho, getting back to this, gave me the idea of something, if you want to do something different. A lot of surplus World War II aircraft wound up with all kinds of jobs, firefighting, cargo. A lot of them got pushed back into the airlines. So there are a lot of modeling opportunities if you feel like doing something different. And this is just one. So I actually thought about if I got my hands on a PV2 model, I might actually make this out of it just to do something different. And because it's part of my personal collective memory. And, you get to do some weathering. I mean, look at all that grime underneath the engine and everything. It'd be a lot of fun. And, of course, these airplanes were just maintained to the level necessary. When you peeked, there was one of them, I opened the door because they weren't locked up, but you couldn't get to the cockpit to the rear door because they had this gigantic hopper in the fuselage for carrying all the fluids and all the poisons and everything. And
so they just shot the fluid out the wingtip, and it kind of.
I think it also went. I think it also. Yeah, but I think it also went out the. I believe it also went out the spreaders in the belly too. And I don't know if they had pumps or if Bernoulli did it, but it spread it out and was for fire and was for fighting fire ants. And I'm sure it could have been used for other stuff, but that's what they were set up for. Most of the airplanes probably ended up the scrapper.
I think the fire ants won.
Well, they survived, as they always do. They're fire ants. I want a C-82 for Aramco oil. Yeah, there you go, from Flight of the Phoenix. There's just... So all I'm saying is sometimes you just get tired of making the same, military airplanes. Well, here's some conversion opportunities for you. I mean, there's countless uses for vehicles and everything else. If you can bring yourself to hack up a kit, which I still have trouble doing, but I'm going to do it for the kit bash. That Bugatti's going to buy it, man. Going to do the whole magician trick. Make sure I got all my fingers left when I'm done. I don't remember the name of it. I actually found the name of the air service that owned them. Where they found pilots for these things, I don't know. But because in the 70s, most of the World War II guys were either quit flying outright or with the airline. So I guess they trained some younger guys. And I I don't think the flying was that tricky. Just fly over the forest and spray the stuff. So, but my understanding is I know some guys that flew those that have flown that type of aircraft, and they're kind of a handful. Always, yeah, always is a remake of A Guy Named Joe. Only instead of being fighters and bombers, they're firefighters. But I love that movie, and a lot of good model work in it. Yeah, Paul, you said speaking of which, next subject, and I forgot to. Let me run grab a photo for you real quick. I was in LaGuardia waiting my turn in line like everybody does at LaGuardia. And I saw this. A 757 of the Royal New Zealand Air Force. Now there's something different for you to model if you have a 7.5 model.
They're a bit away from home.
Yeah, I had a long hike. Nueva York from New Zealand. But I got curious because I know the New Zealand Air Force used to have some. They started live as A4 Skyhawks, but the New Zealanders, the Kiwis, made a lot of modifications to them, turned them into a far more formidable platform. They had them for a long time. They only had about 8 of them. When I was down there, there was actually in the news that they were talking about literally closing up shop for the Air Force. But now the Air Force, which I think only has 47 or 48 aircraft, half of which are helicopters, roughly. But it's cargo planes. It's got this, and it's got some C-130s and some other stuff. But they don't have any tactical assets. But you're talking a country of 5 million people, and jets are extremely expensive to operate. But I had never actually seen a Royal New Zealand Air Force aircraft in person before. So while we were sitting there waiting, I grabbed myself a picture. But there's something you could do with your 757 model if you want to do something different. And the scheme's not that complex. You know, the stripes down the side, the flag on the tail, the Kiwi logo, and Royal New Zealand Air Force. You could probably print that easily enough. Heck, there might even, I'll bet you somebody makes the decals for it. But it just, when I'm going to these places and seeing planes like this, and you're a model builder when you see an airplane or something you haven't seen before, and the first thing that pops in your mind is, hey, that'd make a cool model.
Paul Adams says New Zealand has 2 of these.
Okay, well, he's down there. He's down in New Zealand. I'm sure he would know. It makes sense because planes have to have maintenance. You need to be able to do the mission. And a 7.5 is a bulletproof airplane. I think it may be very well to be the best airliner ever made. And
did you get the tail number?
No, but I'm sure you could Google it easy enough.
57 ends with 571 or 572.
Okay. I was a little busy, doing the whole pilot thing, so I just had to take a second to snap a picture while I was stationary.
Priorities, Max. Priorities.
Yep, safety first. And LaGuardia, you better be listening up because that place is a zoo. Not quite sure why he was at LaGuardia, but okay, whatever.
Still got the chocks on too.
Oh no, he was parked. You see all the cones around it. No, he was terminated, and probably down at the local hobby shop picking up a whole bunch of models to take back to New Zealand with him. Which is ironic, given that New Zealand used to have, Wingnut Wings was out of there. And that's why when I saw that one meme, let me go get it real quick. I had to include it in the beginning part. And what's sad about this one is the truth behind it. Now here it is.
If you ever want to have a real conversation piece, get a 757 and decorate it like Trump's.
Oh God. So this cracked me up, but it's sad, but it's true. Yeah, it's a little hard to make out. The guy on the left has the Wingnut Wings logo. He's got the 1/32 scale Lancaster, and Border bought the molds, and he's like, I made this. You made this. He had Border has it for a while. I made this. Like, oh man, you may be producing them, but Wingnut Wings made the molds, and I don't know. I'm not, I got to look up Border models. I really don't know that much about them. I'm sure they're out of China, but the A4K and TA4K delivered in 70, ex-Royal Australian Navy. Okay. Yeah, and my understanding is, I had the wonderful experience of flying when I was a young jet first officer, of flying with a retired naval aviator who had spent his entire 20 years in the A4 Skyhawk. He knew every model of it, and the difference between like the ones that came out in the 50s and the M models that retired a few years back was day and night. Literally had twice as much power and a lot more avionics. That was a formidable little airplane.
More hobbits than sheep.
Oh my God.
Let's have a lot of hobbits.
Anybody who's been to New Zealand will understand what I'm about to say. And I mean, I say this with love, but I was on the South Island and I was in Nelson. I was going to ride the motorcycle out to, I think it was Takaka. And you have to go across this, you have to go up over this mountain. And it's the first time I'd ridden a motorcycle up into IFR conditions. And literally I was going about 10 kph in first gear, crawling up the hill with both feet hanging off the sides because you couldn't see 5 feet. And I had to remember to stay on the correct side of the road, remember, because they're on the other side, which was fun because I could hardly see the white stripe. I mean, you literally could hardly see your feet. And I would see headlights looming the other way, and I'm flicking a high beam, low beam, they saw me. And everybody's crawling. By the way, if you ever go over those mountain roads in New Zealand, when they say like 25 kph or something, it isn't a suggestion. That's a limit of physics. There are like 147 hairpin turns on that road. It was so much fun. Then you get out the top, and you're literally on top of in a mountain sticking out of the top of the clouds. It's awesome. Of course, I'm on this big, bulky Harley Road King because I'm American. But anywho, I get down the other side of the mountain, and I'm riding, and I'm just riding. I'm like, man, I hope I'm on the right road, Never pass a gas station in New Zealand. Anyway, we're flying down the road, and I see a road intersection. And I was told, and I thought it was a joke, they go, if it's an intersection with a building and 2 sheep, it's a town and it gets a name. And sure enough, there were actually 2 barns and 4, I think, llamas or some llama-looking character. And I look on the map, and it says, and there's the road, and it's an intersection, it says Upper Takaka. So I ride another 18 kilometers or so, and I'm in Takaka, which is an actual real town with people and restaurants, and ate at the Whole Meal Cafe. Anywho, so when I went after that vacation, which was a wonderful vacation, unfortunately I was down there when 9/11 happened, but kind of takes the joy out of your vacation. But I always tell people, yep, I passed through, I went through Takaka, not to be confused with Upper Takaka. And I went to the transportation museum there, everything down in Wanaka. It's a fantastic vacation. I love New Zealand. Of course, that was, like I say, 2001. Oh well. The world changes around us. Anywho, guys, I already told you I added the 3-item build and the movie scene build for next year. That's pretty much all the material I had on my stuff here. And again, a thanks to Plastic Imagination Workshop for the Spitfire. The plan I have for this is I want to construct the frame, and then instead of covering tissue, I want to try pre-printing some paper. And covering this in a paper, that a slightly thicker paper. This is a trick my dad did when he built balsa models to give them the metal look. And I'm just curious if I could pre-print some colored paper and maybe help out, and then paint it, just touch up, paint it afterwards. How that'll work. But so whenever I get a chance to get around to this, that's tentatively the plan. Or just use gray paper and go ahead and airbrush the whole thing. But at some point, and it should look good hanging from the ceiling. So, guys, what's up? Any questions? Anybody, anything you guys you wanted to bring up?
Well, I missed the part earlier about, is that A plastic, or is that a wood kit?
No, that's a Guilo's wood kit.
Oh, cool.
Maybe I should have
put a radio in it and motor and fly it.
Ken, I've wrecked 3 Guilos because I did that at your urging. And that motor you put in the Zero, you're the one who said, oh, this is the engine we need, and it literally pulled the wing off.
Well, somebody fat-fingered the building of it and broke it, and it didn't fly quite so straight.
It was flying straight, and the wing snapped off.
Yep. Okay, fine. Yeah, we'll go with that.
And we had a guy who knew what he was doing flying it, too.
And he had his hands full.
Yeah. He should have throttled that thing back. Let's take a look at this Guilo's real quick.
Fill in the wings with Kingspan foam.
This is definitely a pre-laser cut one. I think. That does not look... Well, let's... Do I dare take a piece out? Yeah, the corner... Nope. I'm pretty sure this is... Kit 504. I'm pretty sure this is pre-laser. It's got all the little fibers on the edges here. Normally when they're laser cut, I've made some laser cut kits, they tap them, they right out. But that's good. I love a little challenge. Although they did do a real nice job of cutting them. Well, yeah, I can tell by the way the little... Yeah. So I'm not... The copyright of 78, God alone knows when it was actually made, but I'm pretty sure that's a pre-laser cut one. I love models.
Die crushed balsa.
Yeah, that's I like that. That's good. That's what it is. Well, all right.
Experience with this, Keenan.
That is a knife blade pattern kit. Yeah, that's definitely not laser cut. The rifleman was cowboy in Africa too. That is correct. For those, Chuck Connors played the flying cowboy, which was in Africa, and he also played the rifleman. I've never built a wooden plane or boat. The Shaggy Buds, if you ever decide to do one, and I do recommend them, watch a couple of videos. A lot of little technique things that'll make life easier for you. But it's another medium. And
most likely, whatever you're planning on doing, somebody's already done it and got a YouTube video on it.
That's true. I've saved myself a lot of grief. There's a topic. How many times have you guys, or have you ever, watched a YouTube video on building a certain kit or doing a certain technique before you tried it and it made things go better? Because I've done that quite a few times, and it's really helped out a lot. Learn from other people's mistakes.
Sure.
The flight deck cockpit at 7.5 and 7.6 are the same. That is correct. In fact, here's a piece of trivia, aviation trivia for you. May not actually even be that useless. Okay. You will notice that the 757 has this very tall landing gear. It was not originally going to be like that. It was going to sit like a 737 or an Airbus 321, close to the ground. But since they were going for a common type rating of the 7.5 and 7.6, the FAA said that they have to have the exact same flight deck height. So they have the same picture on an approach. So because of that, the 757 had to have that long stork-like landing gear so that when you were flying the thing on approach, it looked like the same as if you were doing the 7.6. So the flight, not a problem. As a result of this, there were a couple of unexpected advantages that cropped up. Now, one of them was the engines virtually never catch any FOD, foreign object damage, off the ground. They're high enough that they just don't suck anything up off the ground, even on a wet or contaminated runway. Secondly,
Even hoses?
Thanks, Ken. Just bring up my worst memory ever. Also, another.
Keeping you humble.
Yeah, well, that'll bloody well do it. Another thing is that because you notice how high the whole thing sets up, this means the pilots, if they're correcting for a crosswind, they can bank the airplane a lot further into a crosswind on landing or takeoff without worrying about dragging a pod or getting a wingtip. Of course, it gives you a lot of shock absorbing for the landing. It's got that industrial grade Boeing landing gear on it. So as a result, although it added a lot of weight to the airplane, it's so overpowered that wasn't really a problem. Delta wanted Boeing to put the 7.5 back into production. They were going to order a couple of hundred of them. Boeing refused. They were committed to the 7.8. But the 7.5 is still a singular airplane. Nothing really quite does what it does as well as it does, despite its age. And the 321 with the big engines is a good plane, but it ain't a 7.5. And some smart aircraft maker wants to make a clone of the 7.5. I'm sure they would find customers. The parody songs, I remember those. Stranded, stuck on the toilet bowl.
Seems kind of stupid to me, a business decision that you got a product that you made, and you got customers screaming for you to make more of them, and you say, nah, we don't want to do that.
Yeah, so much for the customer always being right. There is one other thing I wanted to bring up, and that is I'm very happy that some of you guys have started your own YouTube channels. I go out, when I find out about them, I run out and subscribe to them, watch what you're doing. Bruce and the Plastic Imagination Workshop and a couple others. Well, I mean, I'm glad that they started their own channels. I think it's great. Of course, Fast Sports was already doing it, and a couple others, and I just think it's great. And guys, don't be afraid to do that, even if you're just posting pictures of your builds or want to chat about them. And it's great because keeps a little community up and going, keeps people interested, and everybody's up to cool stuff. Everybody likes, and we learn a lot from each other. And you guys' generosity has impressed me no end. And matter of fact, it's made me feel quite humble. So what else have we got? What is about the 7.7 numbering? The design seems odd. Okay. Originally, the first one, the 707, was the Model 80. And when Boeing gave it the name 707, I'm not really sure what was the selection behind it. I have a book on the stuff. I could probably look it up. But
wasn't one of the early airplanes they came up with the 247 or something?
Oh, that's a piston engine. That was the airplane that was supposed to compete with the DC-3 and did not. Actually, the DC-2. Yeah, Plastic Imaginary Workshop's a great little channel. I like the way he does it. He focuses on what he's doing and a lot of cool stuff there. They skipped 717. The next airplane they worked on was the 720. Now, I'm not sure what the idea behind calling it the 720 was. And the 720 looks like a 707, but it's a short-range airplane. I actually know some folks that flew them. It is a structurally different airplane than a 707. It is not just a short-range 707. It's not a clean sheet design, but a lot of the structure is removed because it doesn't need it, because it doesn't have the international tanks on it, a lot of other stuff. It was made much, much lighter, and I think a slightly shorter fuselage. Now, the Dash 80, the prototype, was actually made because Boeing knew that the KC-97 tankers were having a lot of trouble refueling the Air Force jets. And the fact the KC-97 had to be in a slight dive and the B-47s had to be slowed up as much as they could. So clearly a jet tanker was needed. The KC-135, which was the jet tank, came out of the Dash 80, and the 707 are not the same plane either. The KC-135 has a narrow fuselage. It has a lot of optimized stuff on it. Now, yeah, they're clearly obviously related, but there's a lot of differences in them. And there's a certain amount of parts interchangeability. Actually, a fair amount. But so when they made the Airliner version, they fattened it out so they could sit 3 and 3. and the 707 was born. Then they said, hey, we need a short-range jet, so they made a stripped-down lightweight model with less structure in it, less fuel tanks. That was the 720. And I know a guy that actually did like the Boston, New York run that I do in the Embraer 190. And the weird part is that that's a 38 to 48 minute flight, depending on which way you're going. I think you're cranking 4 engines, you got a flight engineer. That's a lot of expense and a lot of headache, for such a short flight. But that was what the airplane was optimized for. But they didn't sell a lot of 720s for just that reason. It was really more airplane than they needed. I mean, now they lightened it up so much they just didn't really need 4 engines. So how are you going to mount 3 engines? And they were playing different ideas. Man, let's just stick them all on the tail. They did it with the Caravelle, and Douglas is doing it with their DC-9. So let's, that's what they came up with. Well, that cleaned the wing up, got rid of all the pylons and everything. So the 727 had this fantastic wing on it. Incredibly clean. You can get all those flaps and slats out there. So now they were able to do the job the 720 had been optimized for with 1 less engine. Still had 3 guys in the cockpit, but and of course the 727 was one of the best-selling airplanes ever. So I'm not really sure how they skipped 717 or how they came up with 720, but after that the convention was, we'll just, okay, we got the 70, the 72, and let's just go with that, and the next one was the 73, then the 74, 75, 76, 777, 787, and 797, which is, well, not built yet, but they went back and used 717 when they merged with McDonnell Douglas. They did not want to use the next iteration name because the plane was already around, so the MD-95 became the 717. They used that unused number. And maybe they were saving it for something like that, or just didn't like the number. I really don't know. But that's so the 717 was much newer than the everything except the 777 and the 78.
Well, Stephanie suggested that it was a turboprop that got canceled.
That would make sense. That actually makes a lot of sense. So they might have already had name allocation.
Bill Paul suggests the company designation was for the KC-135.
It's possible. I actually not really sure. But one thing though, I think one reason the since 717 would have been taken if they're working on turboprop, I think one reason they would have gone with 720 was they wanted something to designate. I'm just guessing that instead of making it the 727, since it was based on the 707, the next number would have been 2, but since it's based on the 70, they would have made 720. And that is a total guess on my part.
It's a good guess. Makes sense to me.
Now, yes, to answer some of the questions folks are asking, the 70 and the 73 do have a lot of comparable parts. The 737 is not a 2-engine 707, but it does look like one. But it does use the same cockpit. In fact, they virtually all use that cockpit except the until you get the wide, until you get the 75 or the 74. In other words, the 70, the 720, and the 73 basically all use the same cockpit. Now, here's a bit of aerodynamic trivia for you. Believe it or not, even though it's a pointier nose in the Airbus with that blunt nose is actually aerodynamically superior. So why does Boeing stay with the pointy nose? Because it became a trademark. But apparently, and don't forget the Airbus came out long after, so it had more time in development. The narrow body Airbuses with that blunt nose, it creates basically a shock wave in front of the airplane, like a bow wave. You know how big ships have that gigantic chin underwater?
Well, there's several reasons for that.
But one of the things it does is it creates a bow wave out in front of it, so less water contacts the ship. It's actually more efficient, even though it's blunt. It moves the shock wave, if I'm not mistaken, or creates a shock wave. It's been a while since I've watched the thing on it. I think Air Mentor Pilot or one of them did a thing on it, but apparently the shock wave or the compressed air in front of it actually creates a lower drag dynamic. than having the pointy nose where all the air goes over the airplane to get more form drag. I think that's it. God, I have to go re-educate myself.
Al just made an interesting observation.
What's that? And it is? Well, now that's your job to tell me so I can look at the people and smile.
Listen up. He said the 707-720 was the short fuselage bird's original designation. To avoid confusion, it became the 720.
And there we have it. That makes perfect sense. There you go. Well, guys, it's going on 9 o'clock. I'm going to have to shut down here. Anybody got anything else before we go? 3 minutes left.
I got one minor question.
Yeah. Yeah?
Is that okay,
yes. What is your question?
Okay. Why do pilots say 7.3 instead of 37?
It just rolls off the tongue easier. 7.2, 7.3. Easier to say, less syllables than 27, 37. It's just,
Are pilots really that lazy?
How long have you known me? Besides, Ken, pilots are ultimately cool, and it sounds cooler. It just slides off. Yeah, babe, I fly to 7.5. I fly to 7.2. I fly to 7.4. Yeah. It sounds so much more piloty than, I fly to 27. What, a Fokker 27? But, well, guys, what?
So that's it. It just sounds cooler.
Yeah. Remember, Ken, we're pilots. We
That's
know
true.
cool. We know when we see it. We know when we hear it because we are it. We are one with the coolness. Aww.
Well, at least we're educational and entertaining.
That's my job. That's what I'm here for. It's my job to be educational. Well, guys, I'm going to run the intro on a loop here so you can chat with each other for a little while I break down the set. And want to thank everyone for tuning in. Hope you guys are having a fantastic holiday for those here in the States. Happy, was it Memorial Day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a veteran. You think I'd know that. Well, guys, take care of yourselves. And as always, model on.
Good night, everybody.
Hit the button.
A little brown one on the side. Don't push the big red one.
Not again. That's what wings fall off. Bye.